Hi, it's Kasia here. And today I've got a guest with me, Kristina, who decided to join me in my 30-day raw food challenge in April. And she wants to share her experience today. So, hi, Kristina, and thank you very much for joining me first in the raw food challenge and now for sharing your experience.
Hi, Cashin. Thank you for having me. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. I think it's a wonderful experience, and I'd love to share what I got from it too, if anybody can relate to it or feel inspired by that, by all means.
Yeah, wonderful. So thank you very much for doing that because it's always we always learn from others, and in some way we can also inspire others by sharing our experience. So I've got several questions for you, and you can basically answer, according to obviously what it feels you've experienced and what feels really what you want to share. So, question number one: What was there any particular reason why you've actually decided to join the 30-day raw food challenge?
Yes, well, I mean, you and I know each other, so I've heard some of the raw food from you before. So I guess I had a bit of what do you call that information before even hearing about your challenge. So when you mentioned it for me and when we talked about it, I just felt I felt it was right for me to try. And I've always loved raw food, so I've never called it that. I've never thought, this is what it is. But I love raw vegetables and fruit and seeds and nuts and stuff like that. And I was reminded actually, like I was not conscious about it when we first spoke, but um, as I felt, yes, I want to try this out, I also realized that when I feel the best food wise with nutrition is actually when I eat raw raw food. And the specific reason also was I had been searching for a solution, you could say, to I've been over the last couple of years actually felt like really low energy after eating, and it might be worth mentioning I did eat so-called healthy, so I would have not that big amount of meat and good gut kind of quality and vegetables and salads and all that, so not too much of things that are not that or that you would normally consider to kind of you would have what is that called, like your blood sugar, your kind of your levels go down. And so I was a bit puzzled with it and was tempting to go with, oh, it has to do with, oh, I'm turning 49 soon, so my initial thoughts was, has it got to do with hormones going down and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And so, and even though when I asked myself that, the first answer I got longer before we started was like, stop eating meat. So I had stopped eating meat when I joined you. And yeah, and so it was a feeling of, this might be a way for me with the energy. And what I really felt drawn to was when I heard you talk about exactly, the energy, the amount of like high vibrating energy in raw food compared to when you have um, food prepared by, with cooking or baking. And so you
Yeah.
basically kill it. So to say.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's dead
So,
basically.
yeah, and I read something resonated with me with that. So that was, yeah. So I had like an issue I wanted to do something about, and at the same time was this feeling of like, yeah, when I know that when you have something and it's kind of like there's something in it for you, and you don't necessarily know what it is or how it's going to work out.
Yeah, but you feel obviously that there's something for you in that experience
Yeah,
for you to go for.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. That's great.
Yeah.
So the next question is, what was the experience like implementing raw plant-based foods for 30 days, like in general? Because 30 days, like it is quite long in a way to go for a new experience. So what was like really the experience, like in general way?
I really liked it. I mean, first of all, I really because I quite fast I felt actually what it does for me to eat raw and eat just and also really eat for like what I feel for in terms of like feeling, just allowing myself to feel like, nah, I'm not going to have cucumber now, whatever it was like,
Yeah.
but I feel for oranges or whatever, and so, but also actually just really feeling how I felt after I've been eating. That was the most like wow, and I realized that is that again I hadn't been that aware of it, the difference,
Mhm.
and I guess I had kind of bought into other reasons. So I kind I was not aware of really feeling into what kind of food would make me feel, in different ways or higher or lower energy.
Yes.
And so in that respect it was easy. And I knew also that it's something that my body recognized. So as soon as I started eating that was like, it's like, this recognition within your system. It's like with other things, like you kind of come home in a way. So that was there pretty fast. It also, for me, the more challenging part was to let go of some resistance I had towards, like I'd been like, oh, I don't want to make food kind of thing. Make a meal. I would feel like that one, not every day, but some days really it's like, oh, I have to go make some food for us, like, and that's of course not the best energy to go into something with, but that was how it was. So I realized in the beginning that I had to um, that was something I that came up as a thing. And then I realized that with this it was kind of fun because it's also an invite to a creativity, I guess. So I love when you share the different things with how you can variate things and how you can just go along with your own kind of what can I try to test and create. So I did some things that tasted awful and I did some things that tasted amazing, but it's like trial and I did your recipes, they taste amazing, but and then I thought like, oh, I could perhaps just kind of create this and that, and then I experimented. And as you know, some experiments kind of go better than others taste wise. I'm fairly sure they were, really good still nutritious wise. But yeah, so that was fun. I I fell in love again with having fun with doing that, and even just preparing how they looked, because that was in the beginning. I thought like, oh, I felt a bit not limited, that's the wrong word, but it's like until I realized if you have 30 you have more, of course, but it's like if you have 50 things, ingredients to choose from. I didn't used to use 50 different ingredients still when I did not only do raw food. So in my head for 2 seconds it was like, oh, what can I do now? But it was because I didn't put the that little amount of time it just takes to kind of plan
Yeah.
a bit and find out. I'm not a big planner in that area, so that might have been a part of it as well. So, but just when I found out that was it, I think that was easier. And
Yeah.
then another for me, I mean, it was more about patterns that came up with why I eat when. So for me, it was more in the evenings, like the evening meal was a bit tricky to find out how do I prepare something that for me is like the last meal of the day. And that has also changed because now I'm like, I don't even feel I can't. Yeah, it's like in the beginning, I've had the feeling of wanting to feel more. What's that called? Not full. Yeah, yeah. I guess kind of where you feel like you've had like a full
Yes.
meal,
Yeah.
and that has changed a bit as well. I still have some, I go a big, I still have some things that are not that I eat once in a while that are not raw. I'm not completely kind of trans. What's that called?
Transitioned. Yeah.
Transitioned. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
Um,
fine.
yeah,
It's
and
a
that was
process.
actually, yeah. And sometimes for me, it's more my, my own rules that I put upon things that makes it difficult, if difficult for me, or a bit challenging. So for me, I mean, your story with the shoes. I mean, you shared this story with the shoes, where when you buy new shoes and you have old shoes, and you have this you can have this period of time where you go a bit back and forth, right? And new ones can even feel a bit uncomfortable. You share it better, but that will kind of hit home for me because that allowed me to like, oh yeah, that's okay. And it's even okay if I choose to live like 80-20% or whatever, like that
Absolutely.
it's yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Before you completely say goodbye to the old pair of shoes, you
mm,
can still have it and just put them on sometimes, and that's absolutely fine. In my opinion, that's my experience. I think it's better to take time for the transition than
yeah,
just go maybe jump into it and then go back with maybe some feeling or maybe judging or criticizing
yeah,
that we're actually doing it. And I think it's easier also for our body to adapt.
yeah, absolutely.
So I think everyone is different, everyone is
Yeah,
unique,
yeah,
and everyone can also take the time individually, whatever it feels right. So even if you still have some food that is not raw, that's absolutely fine.
yeah.
No one said you have to switch off the
Exactly.
completely. There's
But
no need for that.
that could be what happens for me sometimes. It's like, oh, it's like all or nothing, right? And then it's like, and then I realize that might be a bit tough. You kind of have to, not tough that it's, I mean, for me, it's all about the will to do it. So I had
Yes.
things, that I was not willing to completely let go of. That's the honest answer also. But what is interesting is that these are things that perhaps I could benefit of letting go of. They just start tasting bad, basically. So it kind of,
Yes.
it solves itself in a way, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Sounds wonderful. So the next question is that's going to be probably short answer, I guess. How helpful was the guidance and support you received in this challenge?
Yeah, I think was perfect, and a lot of guidance and support for me. I would, I'm pretty okay with a recipe and kind of guidance to this is how you do it, and then you go do it. What was really, and I loved the course, so it's like an extra kind of good thing. I couldn't join you on a lot of the course where it was demos on how you did things.
Yeah, the live.
Um,
We had basically live course when
yeah, yeah.
yeah, you could.
But for me, that was, I think, the whole, like, the practical thing of how you do the food is fairly. Mm, it's fairly, I don't know, it's wrong to say easy. I think it's fairly easy actually to learn, right? It's like if you've never made a juice
That
before, of
doesn't
course you
mean
need to.
to actually do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. But what I really, really, but that's because that's, what also interests me. And that is what I really enjoyed about it, is all your knowledge about what does what and how to kind of reset the whole idea of how we look upon food, and not even like even what is, what is nutrition and what is food, and also what the different um aspects of with the temperature of it and all these things.
Yeah.
It's like that was for me, it's like, because I could actually when I was then aware of these things, I can feel the difference. So
Yeah.
I would normally perhaps actually be drinking water a bit too cold, and I don't mind, I actually kind of enjoy not cold, not refrigerated cold food, but I kind of like, I've never had an issue with cold food in itself, but I've been more aware of just also not having them um, too cold, basically.
Yes.
And also sometimes if I feel like maybe I have, you know, um, been neglecting some area or some kind of, just if I need a rest, and if I feel a bit tired or whatever, then even what you can do with when you then have your food is like, I would just slightly be able to adjust what normally feels right for me or just good for me. I would perhaps prefer it just a bit, like, oh, it would be nice if it's not too cold now or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
that way, that is really interesting for me to learn about. And even as we talked about, where you shared also with, how do we know if we get what we need and all that? And I realized I even there was like running this old story. Because I
Yeah.
was been thinking like, oh, if I eat a bit of everything, kind of not a bit of everything, but like getting, yeah. So a variation is
Yeah.
good. I think it's of course still good, but even also just listening to you, if you have a craving, I had a point here not some weeks ago where I just like had I I ate so many bananas. I was like, what is it? I hadn't had the craving for any bananas before that for a long time. I was like a bit actually not nah, no, kind of had like a no if I had. Then I had that. Now it's kind of gone. So I'm thinking like, must be something in those bananas that
Yes.
yeah. and
Yeah.
and that kind of, that way of just being really natural and just go with, this is what I'm drawn to.
Yeah.
um yeah, that works well, I think.
Okay.
And so,
That's
yeah, so I loved all the demos and all the guidance as well. For me was just extra interesting information with, all the thoughts behind it.
yeah, fantastic. That's great. Were the recipes and life the most clear and easy for you? So you kind of answered really
Yeah,
partly that
yeah,
question.
I can make that short. Yes, absolutely.
That's great. Wonderful. Was there one thing you enjoyed the most? Like if there was like if you were to nominate one thing,
Yeah.
what would
I, what I enjoyed the most for my own sake was really like feeling the difference with my energy, like right away.
yeah.
And then with going through the challenge, what I really enjoyed was what I shared was like all this extra information, not so much this is how you juice, but this is why you do this is how this works, this is why this is, like watermelon or melons are good to eat on its own, and all these little like
Yes.
wisdom information that you can kind of decide, do I want to do it only this way? You can test it out, right? And
Yes.
some of these informations for me was just like, for the melon thing was an aha thing for me because I felt it. It's like, yeah, that's, that's why I don't, always want it all in other things or together with other things. And that was interesting.
Wonderful. That's great. Um, what was the most challenging aspect for you?
For me, it was, yeah, but the most challenging was one, the time of day, like what I mentioned in the evenings, and realizing that I had what I actually needed, and any weird kind of feeling of I wanted something, I didn't know what it was. It was not, it was not even when I thought like, oh, is it like sugar craving or whatever? It's like,
Yes.
no. It's like every, I think you shared about it at some point, but like every thing I could come to think of, like, oh, is that what I have? It was like, no. So it was like, it brought a restlessness up. to surface. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe you need to consider, for me, maybe I need to consider or could benefit from looking at why is that, why is it sometimes I go have something to eat, even though it doesn't have to be like a sugar thing or anything. It's often not, but it's like, like a later eating a bit later. Um, so that was interesting. And that said, I am kind of an evening or night owl, so to say, and that I know can change as well. But I actually also just benefited from adjusting a bit when I eat. So accordingly to, how early I get up in the morning or not, like, and so I just
Yes.
moved a bit when I ate, and that kind of helped. And then over time, it has just disappeared a bit more. And then, I mean, if I have it once in a while, I always, now I know the difference between, is it actually because I'm hungry? Like I forgot to eat a bit more. Because now what happens sometimes is I actually do not feel that hungry when it's time, when it could be time for me to have the last meal. And then sometimes later on, I would actually start feel like,
Yeah.
hungry, so to say. So it's all about these adjustments, I think, and just
Yes.
allowing them, also just allowing, not necessarily allowing myself to eat when I just feel it for a second, but allowing them to show up and really, recognize what it is.
It is, yeah. This is interesting what you've just shared, and I'm going to actually share something from my
Mm.
experience because it's just very closely related to that. And it is because that's also closely, like directly related to our old sort of patterns of eating.
Yeah.
And they are often very deeply ingrained in us. And they are so deep that it's really difficult to really change that. What I found from my own experience when I go on a fast for some time,
Mm.
so the fast is like disrupting the old pattern.
Yeah.
So it works a bit like, reinstalling the system like in a computer. Yeah. So it's sort
Yeah.
of deleting the old system and it's installing the new one. And then it's so much easier to
Yeah.
start thinking in a completely new way. And it's like consciously program ourselves again the way we want consciously to actually experience.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something, if you still feel that you would like to improve this, maybe that's something to consider. Just think, at some point, giving a break from food completely. And then when you come back to eating, you are going to install a new way.
Yeah, absolutely. I've tried it earlier, years ago. Actually, I for a shorter amount of days, I tried fasting, and yeah, that was interesting. And I have actually, I have decided and to fast in some weeks when I have some time off, because I just wanted to give myself the time of being able just to, have a vacation, do nothing much, as whatever I feel for doing, like besides what I feel for doing while fasting. So I'm looking forward to that. And for me, actually, I feel it's easier to not eat, like, not eat than eat very, that, for instance, like juicing for several days alone. And then sometimes for me it feels like it's my system kind of just works better. This is how it feels, at least, with
Yes,
the fasting. And I think I shared that with you. I know it's not exactly what you were talking about. I know you mean a number of days in a row as a fast. I did some months back, like skip every second day, like, every second day I didn't eat anything. Was just interesting for me to experience. It's like, oh, that was easy. So whereas if I have a little, it's, I cannot think of anything but food the entire day, basically. So I think that is what happens when people go on a diet, so to say, right? Or if they I don't know. I've not been big on diets, but the thing is, I think that is what happens for my system. It benefits better from just kicking into, burning fat, and then that's it. Cleaning
Yeah, I
out.
remember you shared that experience
Yeah,
eating basically every other day, which
yeah.
sounds great, wonderful, and you see you were able to do that. So that's
Yeah, for
great.
a couple of months, actually, I did it for 2 months in a row. So it was absolutely possible.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So let's go for the next question. Was it easier to experience this challenge, this 30-day raw food challenge in a group and being guided than if you were to do it by yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the guidance. I enjoyed, seeing both the demos and the live course we had as well. And they were absolutely, as we spoke about your knowledge about this and the wisdom of how things. I can also choose uh, to look upon food and even just allow myself to feel that. That was really helpful. That said, I think for me, I would actually be quite, and it worked that way a lot of the time for me because I couldn't join so many of the calls. So it was great to have the recipes, like you shared a lot of recipes, and just to like decide to read them and choose and variate some, and so I for me it was, I mean, I felt fine with having like you giving me the instructions saying this is how you can go about it, and this is what you need of like the juicing machine and the juicer and things like that, also like practical stuff, but also like the extra knowledge around it. That was what I enjoyed a lot. And then um I found it quite, yeah, I guess easy to go with the recipe and kind of variate a bit if I wanted to test it out, to variate it. And so in that respect, for me, that really worked well. So I think, I mean, you could probably do both with having a really good experience. And it's also interesting, of course, to hear when other people share something. We had some
Yes,
calls where it was shared a bit, so I enjoyed that. And that said, I would also be fine with having the instructions and the wisdom from you in that way, and then go ahead with doing it. It's like
yes.
it's absolutely doable to do that way.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I mean, obviously what I meant by that, not necessarily like attending all the live
Mm,
demos, because we
mm.
had basically two live demos every day,
Yeah.
and most of them were actually recorded. So there was not really the necessity to actually attend them, like
Mm,
actually, but you could just go back, but still having available the guidance, like using it basically when necessary. So but that's
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That, I guess, yes. So the answer is that was, very nice to do that way, and also to be able to go um and have, videos or recordings to watch when and if, I felt like inspiration or wanted that extra knowledge. So that was great.
yeah, fantastic, that's great. um what is your experience with raw foods now? How do you feel after nearly 2 months, because it's like nearly 2 months
Yeah.
since you actually completed that challenge? Have you noticed any difference in how eating raw impacts the quality of your life?
Absolutely. I mean, I continued and I continue to um, implement and learn, and sometimes I fall a bit out of. Well, I do it every day, so it's not like I'm not eating raw for many days or anything. But I do have, so as we talked about, I do sometimes have a piece of bread or something like that. But um, uh, but it becomes more and more clear to me. It's like, yeah, I do that, but it doesn't really do me much good. It's like I can have still like,
It's
that
reminding you.
tastes really nice, but then afterwards I'm like, like, okay, was it worth it, kind of thing. But yeah, it's not a learning curve because you have the wisdom, but it's like a decision, I guess, to make. It's like, do you what do you want to have those whatever minutes or of feeling whatever satisfaction comes with
Yeah,
whatever, right? And
yes,
then
yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's quite interesting, and we have
Sometimes
had.
it is exactly what you've said. Like, so do you want to go for, like, having the two choices? So do you want to go for, like, 5 minutes of pleasure, enjoying, for example, this piece
Yeah,
of bread, or do you want to go for how you actually want to feel afterwards? Yeah.
yeah,
And
exactly.
sometimes it takes time as well.
You know what? And actually, as we talked about, I think it's so funny. I have a son, and as you know, and he has been, of his own free will, joined me as well, and it's interesting because sometimes we feel like, oh, we feel so not good now when if we went somewhere and got something that we normally do not eat or whatever, and then we're like, oh, don't want to do that again, because then it's so easy to feel, it's like, can it really be true that it even feels worse now when you eat something that is like, I there's something that is high on, refined sugar, or it just even, you know, just, well, I don't eat meat or anything now. I simply, I cannot eat it basically. So that's a given. That's not an option for me anymore. But it's interesting. Then you kind of, you feel just how you so easily feel how it influences your whole system. And I
Yes.
can feel it also with, I still drink coffee, and I have a cup of coffee. And when I do, sometimes it's like, really, oh, that was really, I kind of enjoy, I enjoyed it. That was nice. But I also absolutely know all the times where I could just have left it, not. And what happens, or did happen for a period of time, was also I would make the coffee and then I would not drink it, because
Hmm.
then I kind of feel, nah, I don't even want to drink it, so why would I, I don't even feel for it. So that those adjustments are what is becoming more and more clear, I guess.
Yeah. Sometimes those kind of things, because we have the habit of, like,
Mm,
probably it's a really good example of just the habit, and it's something that it's like socially it's sort of recognized, like, you just sit and you just enjoy the cup of coffee, and it's just the habit. Sometimes it's maybe not even the coffee itself, but it's actually just the habit of just sitting and having this cup of coffee,
yeah,
that it might take time also to just let go of that and just say, I'm actually absolutely fine without this cup of
yeah,
coffee. Yeah.
exactly.
And nothing is gonna sort of change my feeling or the way my day is going to be.
No, exactly. And another, I mean, what I have, so all in all, with the raw food as such, I just enjoy how it feels basically in my system. For me, and it tastes amazing. So it's like when you, and it's also, it's a joy when I put some time and effort into just being inspired in the kitchen, doing like different things, and it's a direct kind of, I have, my son will absolutely notice. So it's not about, oh, look what I've done, but he will, without me saying anything, like, wow, that tasted good, because you can simply taste when you put a bit more effort into things, or into just making
Yes.
like little different dishes and having kind of, an experience. We do a lot of just like, also, we've always done that. So it's not about the raw food. We've done a lot of like really mixed, not only salad leaves, but like salad of everything, like all different kinds of vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. So, but just making an effort to putting it into, or turning it into little different dishes that you can mix. For instance, for the last meal of the day, that is that is something I can see the value of, because it gives also that experience of like really good, enjoying it and really good taste, and and the value of sitting down having a meal also, which I think is one of the things that you get really reminded this. I mean, I could probably be good with, like, like a, I don't know, like an animal or like a cow. I would just be like snacking something during the day, and then I don't even feel that of a calling for having big meals.
Yeah.
But I'm actually often better with just snacking a bit over whatever amount of time, and then I can have a bit bigger meals. But it works well for me not necessarily to have big meals, and you just realize how big a part that is also of being social, or being like, so that is, I guess, one of the things I just realized is like, you know wow, even just, calling yourself for not eating meat. I mean, we went out, we wanted to celebrate something, we wanted to find a restaurant. It was kind of difficult to find a restaurant that did not have like four different kinds of meat and four different kinds of, it's like, wow, I didn't because I didn't realize that early on, right?
Yeah.
So of course you're gonna find places it's not that, but it was interesting. It's like also what we put value on. Like when we go out to eat, it's like it's fine dining if we have, four different dishes in a row with four different kind of, protein or meat, basically, or fish or whatever, right?
Yes.
So yeah, that's interesting. But it's for reinventing. I've had, guests that have been guinea pigs into raw food dining. So they've been like, it's like, there's no meat. There's this. And
Yeah. I
they
think I
enjoyed
think
it.
I think it's probably a great way of introducing and sharing, because it's
Absolutely.
from my own experiences. Like whenever I prepared something, my friends absolutely loved it, and
Exactly.
they found really inspiring, because it was something that they would never make themselves, and it was always something that they would never buy anywhere, because basically those kind of meals are not being served anywhere. So it was really unique, and at the same time delicious and very nutritious as well. So
Absolutely. That is also the feedback that I have gotten from it. So yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's great. That's wonderful. So let's go to the next question. Are you planning to continue eating raw and explore more? I guess you probably answered that
Yeah.
question.
Yes and yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's go to the next one then. Would you like to share something with those who perhaps are considering implementing raw foods, but maybe don't know exactly where to start or how to really approach it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like when you offer of course, when you offer the 30-day challenge, I mean, that's an obvious way to get started, so to say, that you can join you, people can join you, and they get the guidance, and can ask questions, and they can, get recipes, and get started. And what I would share is really like the stories with the story with this year's is that for me, I guess that was actually the thing to realize was it's okay. It's okay to, even though I can. And I remember you saying it to me, because it was a bit like last minute, like, oh, it's there. Of course, yes, I wanted to, thank you, I want to join. And then I realized, I felt at that point like, wow, I had a bit, I had some things to do, and I felt that I didn't know if I had enough time to kind of, get to know these new recipes and do it, and go shop for it and all that, because because of course it takes a bit of, not more effort, but just like more awareness of what you're doing in this. I mean, the time is the same whether you go buy something for, it's just like whether you kind of, unplug and do what you normally do, or you kind of plug into what you then can go buy, right? And as soon as I realized that and joined, then that was fine. And I did have also in the beginning a bit like I did the juices and smoothies, and it took me a bit more, like a couple, a week or something before I really got started beyond, big salads basically.
Yes,
so
yes,
so um,
yes. There's
so
more variety, basically, not just
yeah, so I
salad.
think, just to be able to join something like what you did was, of course, really a help. And for me, it always works really well with, like, we start there and that's it, and then you go do it, right? And so the commitment of that works well. And then I would say, I mean, the biggest is just like, it's so fun also. And it's, the benefits from it is just so obvious, I think. So, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
forgot the question, Kasia. What was the question?
What would you like to share? Basically,
Yeah, I mean, try it. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is also, if you try it and you feel that, you can feel the difference, you can feel the benefit. At least you know that, and then you can decide, what level or what kind of,
yeah,
you want it to have. But it's interesting to have that awareness to really feel into, what does this, whatever I'm eating right now, what does
yeah,
it do for my energy, so to say.
yeah. I think the only way, and this is about everything,
Yeah,
all aspects really of life. Unless we experience something, it's only a story.
yeah,
It's like a story, but it's just kind of imagination. And to really find out, to really get to know something, we need to really experience. So it's like, trying
absolutely.
to learn how to swim with actually getting into the swimming pool or into the sea or a lake. Yeah. It
Yeah,
just doesn't work. We can only just
yeah,
dream about it, but actually never really feel the water.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and then I would say, yeah, like, if you are, with, if you're living with someone, or have family, kids, or whatever, you know, it's easier than you think, and it's not about forcing anything into other people's habit. It's just like an option, and they can choose, and then, I mean, that's been quite um, nice for me as well to see. It was like, not, it's like, I'm going to go do this. We can do whatever, we normally do, or what you want to eat, we can do that. And there was just like this free kind of choice. And that it's really panned out well. And, or even, even if, that was just a good way of doing it for me. And it's just, things that work, they work. And then if people, benefit from it, I think everybody can feel that, and kids enjoy, mostly, I mean, fruit and vegetables, and yes, especially, I think, like, raw. A lot of kids probably don't always like them prepared, because they get like, oh, right, when you get, and so, but raw vegetables and raw, I mean, we've eaten a lot of it anyway, but it's easy to like, so to say, and
Yeah.
it's fun to experiment with, and the whole sweet thing of it. Like, you can do like these raw bites. What are they called? What are they called? What do you call them, Kasia? I forgot. The Sorry.
Treats,
Yeah,
raw treats.
treats, exactly, like with the dates and all that in it, and it's just, fun to experiment a bit with. And also, if you have kids, it's fun also for them to find out that this tastes amazing.
Yeah.
And, and also, like, it's you don't need, it's not that kind of, you eat a whole bunch of something and then you feel awful, with like a sugar, addiction craving thing. But you can eat some and you're actually kind of satisfied with like a cup of those, and then that's it.
Yeah, that's
And
the
so,
difference basically in raw, because it's so nutritious and with all the enzymes that are
yeah,
basically alive, so they help really with the
yeah.
digestion, and that's really what gives us energy.
Absolutely. And I would say also, that's the thing, just to be aware of, like, when are we, when have we had that change of how that feels. I think that's one of the things that is really interesting for me, and was good to know about, because you shared about different hungers and stuff like that as well, right? And when you become more aware of what is what. And I would have days where I would like, I know it's so nutritious, the things I've got, and I'm fine. And then, I would have whatever craving of what we talked about earlier that I didn't know what was. But it's also adjustment into allowing how it really feels to
Yes.
have had what you really need, and then that's it. It's
Yeah.
not about lack, it's not about being hungry all the time, it's not about that. But it's like you can actually feel, I have had what my body needs, and then all the other things can show up. That is, what is not
More mind. It's more the mind that's showing up.
exactly, like old, patterns, behavioral, and even like social patterns, right?
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, that was interesting also to be able to recognize, okay, I'm fine. It's not like I'm, starving or anything, and
Yes.
I'm not even hungry. So, there's something
Yeah.
here. It's like
That's
we,
great.
yeah, we
Yeah.
talked about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you are mentioning this because this is also a process and it's good to take time. That's one of the reasons that, I recommend and I even encourage people to take time, not to rush into that because there's no need to rush
Mm,
to anything. I mean, generally in life, there's no need to rush into anything. But one of the reasons is because there's so many old patterns and
yeah,
the mind is so used to certain things that when we take this journey slowly, we'll be able to notice lots of things. And as you've shared, it's the awareness.
mm,
And the more we focus when we eat, this is also one of the reasons why I really encourage people to eat and just dedicate time to eating, nothing else.
yeah,
When we are fully present with eating, we know exactly what's happening. And we will be able to notice when we've eaten and the body is going to tell us, okay, that's basically all that we need.
yeah,
Yeah. And if there's still something, the mind is saying, oh, I would like more. And then we'll be able to ask question maybe, okay, so what is that need about? Yeah.
yeah,
We
exactly.
can go sort of deeper or further into that, but we will be able to notice that when we've actually eaten and it's enough for the body, and when the mind is still craving,
Yeah, exactly.
what is
Yeah,
craving?
yeah. And that is very becomes very clear with
Yes.
this. I think, of course, the more, for longer. That is why also I would say I would recommend like doing it for 30 days because it is, a journey into. In the beginning, it was something showing up. In the middle, it was a bit different, and towards the 30-day kind of mark, it would be again different. So, allowing oneself to have a longer experience of it is, you'll find out that things change so fast also. It's not about it takes long, it's actually because it goes so fast that it changes, that it's interesting to do it a bit longer because you see that whatever I experience right now, I know that in whatever time that will more or less automatically change with that awareness, and even without I had to force it. I also allowed myself to say, well, sometimes I did have a craving, yeah, and I knew it probably wasn't, and I would address it. And sometimes I would like, yeah, well, now I just, I'll go out and have whatever piece of whatever I could find, that we had from dinner, and do that. And also to have that experience, like, did it help me? Did it kind of, I was like,
Yeah,
no, it
absolutely.
didn't. But then,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. This is really like our life. We are
Mm.
learning. We are
Exactly.
just learning all the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah,
then I
that's
just love
great.
the whole intuitive thing of it, like, as you share as well, like we when we really pay attention, we know exactly what to eat when and
Yeah,
what we really need, what our, actually what our physical body also really needs. And
absolutely.
and yeah,
Yeah, fantastic. And I was really pleased that your son actually joined you as well.
Yeah, and he loves it.
That
Yeah.
was brilliant. And
Mm.
I remember you've shared actually, several things. And I thought it was just amazing because he's only 16, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in such sort of young age to actually start, I think that's amazing. So
Yeah,
that's great.
and of course, I mean, he can just choose as he wants, but mainly that is what he eats as well. And sometimes still he, would love to have some, meat. And then when he eats it now, so it's not always actually does what he it used to do for him. So that's also, and it's not about it has to be that way, but that's also something he just recognizes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's yeah, and it's just nice to be aware of what food does in your body, basically. And we
Yeah.
know it, like we're born with it, right? But then we kind of get away from it with traditions and all sorts of things.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Fantastic. So you also partly answered that question. Did 30 days feel short or long for you?
Yeah, to me, it was like it didn't feel short or long. Really, it felt like perfect, and I think it did
Okay.
also. Um, I guess I knew when I started that I had at least the intention of feeling that I wanted to continue. So it
Yeah,
was for me never like it's a 30-day thing. But
yeah,
for me, it was a 30-day is a good length of introduction to go through some different things. And some of the things that you had also be sharing a bit about was like some I experienced, some I didn't. Then I experienced my own kind of variation, of course, of it and
yeah,
so forth. So I think it's a good time. It's a good amount of time to have. I didn't feel it. I actually, I guess I felt it went fairly fast. Actually, I was surprised. I remember the last days where it's like, oh yeah, it's done, kind of done. The 30 days are over now, so to say.
yeah.
So yeah.
That's great. Wonderful. Yeah. So one more question is there anything else that you would like to basically share from your experience, like after like nearly 2 months? Is there anything that is coming to you that you would like to share?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a renewed approach to food in general, and I enjoy that. And for me, it's also some kind of uh, no, what's that called? Like awakened awareness of what I know is good for me and what is not good for me
Yeah.
to you put into my system. And so that to 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 raise my awareness within food in this way is something that I'm happy that I joined you and that I've done it and I'm doing it and it's kind of growing on me. And also for me was like, of course it's like, with some of the things that I do, it's like reconnecting to the core of what we really are
Yeah.
and how it works best for us. It's not even about doing the right thing. It's which is good as well, but for me it was also like, my system recognizes it to be good for me.
Yeah.
So I think that is probably what has been always profound for me to refine or to find again, and to be aware of, to be conscious of.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, that I think is. And then I mean, speaking of the energy of it, it's like, do you want to put the high end, good stuff feel in your system, or do you want to
Yeah,
try to run on fumes, so to say, from something that's not really working that well? It's like, a different kind of, if you put the wrong fuel on an engine, then it doesn't really work, right? So I think that is actually what it feels like for me. And also, I would say, just, as we've spoken some of, also the time right now is also just so timely. So I would say I'd never considered myself turning necessarily into, you know vegetarian or vegan, or just not eating meat. I've never eaten a lot of meat, but for me to, so it's not something I've consciously, chosen that way, but it was like I kind of got the message all the time, to
yeah,
myself. It's like, and I think the time now, with all the shifts that we also have been talking about, at
yeah,
different levels of energy, and lifting it, raising the vibration. I assume that more people that haven't really thought of it that way before will feel called to in some way to change something. And I would say also just listen to if there are some symptoms that did not normally was not normally there, so to say, with energy and food. Then I would think that that would be worthwhile testing out and listening to as well, simply because we need, better fuel, so to say.
yeah. So
Um,
there are all kinds of sayings, about what
yeah,
you've mentioned about energy and how food basically impacts us, because that's energy, and
mm,
whatever level of energy we go for, that's how we fuel our system.
yeah,
And one of the sayings that I really like is like, eat from the vine and feel the vine. So
yeah,
um, if we want to feel great, we need to
mm,
go for great energy, for good quality food that literally fuel us. And
yeah,
then that's how also our quality of life is going to be.
yeah,
So that's great. I'm really pleased to see basically how you still evolve into that, because it's never going to be the same. That's a great thing as well. It's going to evolve.
yeah,
And I'm sure that as you go further, you will basically get to different sort of level of to experience different level of awareness, and also the food as well.
yeah.
So I would be curious, to hear after, I don't know, a few months or even next year, where you are, for example, how
Absolutely.
that evolved, because I'm sure it's going to just change, and it impact you as well, because that's how it works.
Yeah. And I've experienced already how it has changed some. I mean, like shifting over time with, yeah, how I eat, and what I felt at one point, and then what it changed into, and
Yeah,
what I, experienced to feel this, whatever amount of food also to eat. So it's an interesting journey also, as to, what how you what relationship, in a lack of a better word perhaps, but what relationship you have with food.
no,
So it's a
absolutely.
good way of investigating that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's great. So, Kristina, thank you very much. First, for joining the 30-day raw food challenge, um, for the commitment, because it required basically to commit to that, like make conscious choice to really go for that, and actually doing it and implementing it. And now, thank you very much for sharing your experience, because I know there are already lots of people who eat that way, but maybe not everyone is open to share their experience. And
Mm,
I think, that was also one of the ways how I really got into that, because I also heard from other people, from their experiences, how they benefit, how they were eating, which was very helpful. So hopefully what you've shared is going to also help and inspire others. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that, for your time also to share all this in this interview. And I really look forward to just hearing from you from time to time, how it's all going. So thank you very much for joining me.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. I enjoyed both today and also the challenge for sure. There's no reason not to do it, all the reason to do it. So I can absolutely recommend that.
Great, wonderful. So thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Kasia.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.